Hey guys, welcome to Darth Tyrax Presents. I'm Darth Tyrax. On this episode, we're going to talk about something which is obviously not real, but is something based on something real. Many of you who are going to be younger may have grandparents or grandfathers who have some of these materials. If you know any mechanics, they may have some of these materials. But there's a series of books called Owner's Workshop Manuals or Owner's type manuals that have been made for cars and other vehicles and such for in-depth knowledge of how to work on things or parts and how things are assembled or disassembled. And they're actually really neat if you like that sort of thing. However, they've come out with a series of these books for science fiction or fandom or other things. Now, I have several, one for Star Trek, I have four for Star Wars, and they're called the Haynes Owner's Workshop Manual. Now, this one is for the Millennium Falcon. It's actually the second edition version. They had an older version, but when the Solo movie came out a few years ago, they did a new one because it was so different in its look and how it was, and some of the changes that were made for the sequel trilogy as well. Now, what they do in this book, however, is they talk about different things within it. They go into some of the variations that are different types of ship, and they talk different versions of the YT transports, but by and large, it's mainly about the 1300s. So you get to see the different looks that it had, and it gets into interior, the interior layouts of different versions, and then they get into some of the systems, but it breaks it down in a lot of detail, which is, for me, is great. I thoroughly enjoy stuff like that, right? Now, by and large, it's obviously it's fictional because it's Millennium Falcon, right? So, like a couple other ones I brought in, I have one for the USS Enterprise, which it too goes through the different variants from the original series to Enterprise to the Enterprise C, which is I think only ever in the one episode. Maybe it's a two-parter. I can't remember. But it's from the NX to the NCC 1701, the A, the B, the C, the D, the E, and talks about how the systems are changed, what it's armed with, what kind of systems it has, its size, it's and other things too. And the other one I brought in was for the TIE Fighter. Now, the TIE Fighter one goes through all kinds of TIE variants, how it came about, its predecessors, the different main variants used by the Empire and the First Order at a later time. Gives very good technical information, like how much acceleration it can do and things along those lines. And it's great for someone who likes to get into the weeds of the technical things behind ships or vehicles. But the series itself is actually a lot of fun because they do all kinds of stuff. Like I have one for Rebel fighters as well and one for the Death Star. And it gets into elements of the Death Star that there's civilians on board, there's recreational facilities, and it's really set up like a giant city in space because it has like 1 million people on board. The Rebel one gets into origins of those fighters as well as the Resistance fighters used in the sequel trilogy, and a lot of details in regards to flight systems, weapons, shielding, what the difference is between one or the other, especially when it comes to like the X-Wings or the Y-Wings, the differences with the TIE fighters in that series. But the books are a lot of fun, and I've always been more of a collector of information than, say, a collector of toys. And the best part of that is information can last for a while, and it's easier to store than all the toys, honestly. Now I have my share of toys and models and miniatures and such, but I've always enjoyed going back to reread reference material, even more so than novels, reference material. And this series, I've seen books for Aliens, about the APC and their dropship. I've seen stuff done for like real life things like the Sherman tank. I think there was one for Battlestar Galactica and the Vipers. they touch on a lot of like if you look them up, there's a lot of different ones out there. And again, I've always been someone who loved reference material. I tried to get all the essential guides they put out back in the day for Star Wars, which gives you a lot of fluff about characters or planets or droids or technology, and that's kind of like the stuff I really enjoy reading. Like I do enjoy reading novels too, as well, mind you, but um, a lot of the stuff here obviously is um, well, nerdy, we'll say. For example, like there's something that most people may not even recognize, but if you know where to look, you see it. um, and then you have like they get into the thing about targeting computers, and like in this case they talk about the how the ion engine works and why it's so important. um, like they get into, here's the vaunted TIE Defender, but by and large, it's meant for fun. Like a lot of times, people take stuff way too seriously when it comes to fandoms and the things they like, and it's like sometimes you just gotta, go with it and have fun with it. And this book series is really good for that. In that, it fleshes out details you're not gonna see in the series, or in a novel, or in a comic, or in a movie. And a lot of people have always asked, like, well, how does that work? I remember back in the early 90s, I bought the Star Trek Next Generation technical manual. Why? I was interested to find out more about the ship, because we only get little tidbits here and there when it's important to the plot of the episode. And that's why I like this stuff, because I really like to get into the in-depth stuff behind the scenes as to why is the ship this way? Why do phasers do that? Why are photon torpedoes like that? How does a hyperdrive work? I've done the math. Hyperdrives are damn fast. And you can get across the galaxy, 100,000 light year galaxy, in about a week, compared to warp, which, if anybody who's watched Voyager knows, to get across the galaxy takes several decades. Um, but that's neither here nor there. Now, there's other stuff too, like there's other reference books as well, which I may do at a later date. But these ones are a lot of fun because there's a lot of good art in it, photographs used, that detail things, and they're pretty high res. So when you're looking at things, you can see the details in control panels and how they explain it. It's not so technical that the average person won't understand it. But by and large, again, they're a fun thing to go through. It's neat to see the different parts of the ship you may not even see in the series, um, or how things are broken down. And in that instance, for me, these are awesome because that I love the reference material. Like to me, Star Wars, Star Trek, even something like Macross, Battlestar Galactica, Firefly, Terminator, a lot of those series, I want to know more about the technical aspects of the items in the franchise because it's interesting to me, and it's interesting to a lot of people. RoboCop's another one. Like I love reading up on, um, okay, how does this do this, and how does that work, and how much stuff can they cram into his head for targeting and recording and all this other stuff. How heavy is a Terminator? Like, can somebody actually try to pick it up? How strong are they? Things like that. The ships, like how long can they last without resupply? How much range does a transporter have in Star Trek? Um, and how fast is warp? I've done the math on that too, just so you're aware. But overall, it's a great source of background information. If you're a gamer, it's really good for that too, because it lets you add other elements in that you may not know otherwise for storytelling purposes in your own stories. So getting these books is awesome. If you can track them down, I highly recommend them. And it's great in that respect. It's interesting reading in general. Again, it's great material if you're running your own games at home and telling your own stories. It's really good for writing your own stories because now you have a technical aspect that you can draw from to know how something works if you want to incorporate it into your story, or with your players or what have you. Um, but by and large, they're a great little resource. They're a fun thing to have, um, and I can't recommend them enough. So with that, we'll wrap up, and we'll talk to you next time. Cheers.
T-Rex, blossom.